Right, so nothing quite cheers the soul these days like Benjamin Netanyahu having a no good, very, very bad day, does it? And global resistance towards the atrocities he is overseeing in Gaza is making sure that in the last few days he has been having an absolute mare, because the world is becoming not just a smaller place for him, with that arrest warrant lying over his head, but for Israel as a whole. Sure, the West still supports him, still arms him, for as long as they can anyway, as a tariff war with China could well change that. But for other countries, solidarity with Gaza means restrictions and bans coming for the genocidal blue and white state, from heads of state that believe in doing the right thing, all the way down to grassroots movements of ordinary working class people demanding a shift against Israel from the ground up. So here's a story to cheer you up, I hope, amidst all the negativity surrounding Israel's genocide. Actually, 3 stories to cheer you up. I'm spoiling you somewhat. And with any luck, these 3 will be just the start. Right, so as Israel's genocidal campaign in Gaza is now in its 18th month, the world is witnessing not just the systematic slaughter of Palestinians, but also the slow unravelling of Israel's international impunity. A growing number of nations, trade unions, grassroots movements are taking concrete steps to isolate Israel, disrupt its military supply chains, and hold it accountable for its crimes. So let's start with this first story, and this one concerns Bangladesh, currently with an arrest warrant out against UK Labour MP Tulip Siddiq in relation to alleged corruption. She, the niece of the former despotic ruler Sheikh Hasina, as I covered in a video just the other day. But this is about Israel. Bangladesh has never formally recognised Israel as a state, a principled stance rooted in its own history of liberation from genocide, followed by its independence in 1971. And for decades, Bangladeshi passports carried an explicit disclaimer. This passport is valid for all countries of the world except Israel. Now, this restriction was lifted in 2021 under Sheikh Hasina's increasingly authoritarian regime, a move that sparked outrage amongst Bangladeshis who saw this as something of a betrayal of Palestine. However, it was done merely to meet international standard, and travel to Israel remained banned in Bangladesh anyway. It didn't in effect change anything, it's just the wording was removed. Bangladesh has always stood on the side of Palestine though, so this didn't go down well. On the side of Gaza throughout Israel's atrocities since October 7th as well. But now the Bangladeshi government, under the rule of the interim government being led by Mohammed Yunus, have reinstated this phrase in all Bangladeshi passports. This passport is valid for all countries of the world except Israel. The Times of Israel covered this move, and notably demonstrations in support of this move happening in Bangladesh. An excerpt of their coverage stating that Nalima Afroz, a deputy secretary at the Home Ministry, told Bangladesh Sangbad Sangla, BSS, news agency on Sunday that authorities had issued a directive last week to restore the inscription. The Director General of the Department of Immigration and Passport was asked to take necessary measures to implement this change. Local newspaper The Daily Star quoted Afroz as saying Sunday. The Bangladeshi population's support for an independent Palestinian state was visible on Saturday when around 100,000 people gathered in Dhaka in solidarity with Gaza. Demonstrators beat the images of US President Donald Trump, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi because of their support for Israel. Symbolic coffins and effigies representing civilian casualties in Gaza were also carried during the rally. The Bangladesh Nationalist Party, headed by former Prime Minister Khaleda Zia, and other Islamist groups and parties expressed their solidarity with the rally. Now, this might just be seen as a bureaucratic act. It's not really changing anything. Bangladeshis were banned from travelling to Israel before. Nothing has changed. They still are. But it's still a show of whose side Bangladesh is on at a time when it does the most damage. It is political warfare, in effect. By underlining the fact that travel to Israel and recognition of Israel is banned for its citizens, Bangladesh ensures that no Bangladeshi can unknowingly or willingly even aid the occupation. And it also sends a message that collaboration with genocide will not be tolerated, nor should it be. Now, while Bangladesh bars its own citizens from travelling to Israel, the Maldives have kind of done the reverse, banning all Israeli passport holders from entering its territory. Again, there's a familiar theme here insofar as recognition of Israel goes. There's been no diplomatic ties between the Maldives and Israel since the 1970s. The Maldives has long refused relations with Israel. But now it is enforcing that stance materially by banning Israeli citizens from travelling to the islands. Maldivian President Mohamed Musa passed comment on this directive being implemented by saying that the ratification reflects the government's firm stance in response to the continuing atrocities and ongoing acts of genocide committed by Israel against the Palestinian people, and reaffirms its resolute solidarity with the Palestinian cause. This will naturally come as a further blow to Israeli tourism. The Maldives is a luxury destination. Goodness knows, an awful lot of us would quite like to be so lucky as to go there one day, wouldn't we? So blocking Israelis is both an economic strike as well as a symbolic one in some solidarity with Palestine. It can be argued that as a Muslim state, perhaps it's no surprise the Maldives have done this. But if that were the case, a great many more Muslim nations would do so as well, and so many of them simply haven't. Not that being a Muslim state should even be a prerequisite for copying what the Maldives are doing. Make the world a smaller place for Israel. It's a model that I would argue should work for plenty of other nations. And if more states follow suit, Israelis could face increasing global isolation. The ban is being framed as resolute solidarity with Palestine and a direct challenge to the normalisation deals being pushed by the likes of the United States and the United Arab Emirates, for example. Of course, we've seen other nations acting in a similar way to that of the Maldives, haven't we? But that comes along with the risk of an arrest warrant in some cases too, because some travel restrictions are not just about passports, they're also about justice. The Hind Rajab Foundation, the HRF, named after the 6-year-old Palestinian girl killed by Israeli snipers, has been documenting war crimes and pushing for international arrest warrants for IDF soldiers having travelled abroad on holiday. And as a result of that, several Latin American and African nations have begun denying entry to Israelis as well, with military service records. European activists are pressuring governments to enforce universal jurisdiction laws against visiting IDF personnel, with mixed results, it has to be said. And of course, arrests have been made, notably in places like Brazil, but the HRF have also sought the apprehension of Israeli soldiers in Thailand, Sri Lanka and Chile. This is really important work they're doing, because if Israeli soldiers know they may face arrest abroad, no matter where they go, their sense of invincibility crumbles, and again the world gets that bit smaller for them. The third story I want to cover, though, is proper grassroots stuff, the sort of stuff that is within the power of all of us to exercise, in theory at least. And it picks up on a story I covered last month, actually, where shareholders of Dutch shipping giant Maersk brought forward a motion to end arms sales as the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement worldwide was hitting them right in the dividends. As it happened, the motion fell, the board saying it wasn't necessary, that they didn't ship military gear to Israel anyway. Therefore, it was moot. A moot point. Well, let's pick this story up in Morocco now then, shall we? In Morocco, the Union of Port Workers, which is an affiliate to the very powerful Moroccan Labour Union, big trade union out there, has called on dock workers to refuse to unload the Maersk Nexo, a cargo ship on its way suspected of carrying military supplies to Israel, all flagged up by the brilliant work of Declassified UK, an excerpt of their research on this vessel stating that Danish shipping giant AP Moller Maersk is quietly transporting fighter jet equipment to Israel, new documents suggest. The information is contained within cargo data reviewed exclusively by Declassified and The Ditch. The data indicates how goods from US Air Force Plant 4 in Fort Worth are being transported to Haifa port in Israel on 2 Maersk container ships between the 5th of April and the 1st of May, and then a separate company will courier them by land to Nevatim Air Base. Air Force Plant 4 is a US government-owned facility which is operated by Lockheed Martin, the prime contractor in the international consortium that produces F-35 jets. It hosts a mile-long factory where F-35 fighter jets and components are produced before being dispatched to NATO partners and allies, including Israel. Nevatim Air Base is home to Israel's squadron of F-35s, which have been used to commit war crimes in Gaza. Maersk did not respond to a request for comment prior to publication, but a representative later told Declassified that Maersk Detroit and Nexo Maersk are carrying containers with F-35 parts. However, these shipments are destined for other countries participating in the F-35 program. And yet, Declassified UK reports that Maersk Nexo's cargo destination is Nevatim Air Base, which, as many of you watching will no doubt know, is a key Israeli military site, very much in Israel, and is home to all of Israel's F-35s. Did Maersk board protest too much, therefore? Seems they might have done. As a result, the Moroccan Dock Workers Union has called on its workers in the ports of Casablanca and Tangiers Med to boycott the ship and refuse to offload or service that vessel in any way, shape or form. Moroccan unions now following Spain in boycotting ships carrying military hardware for Israel, and it's a powerful message to send to other ports in the Mediterranean. With the Red Sea no longer realistically passable for such shipping thanks to the Houthis, the Mediterranean being cut off as well? Well, if more ports get on board with this, that would completely screw Israel over, with no way of getting the necessary military gear to Israel via sea at all anymore. But we'll have to wait and see if more ports in more countries get on board with that. This is workers' power in action, though, using their leverage to enforce a de facto arms embargo, BDS in action once again. So we have travel bans both to Israel and also from Israel, along with dock worker blockades and arrest campaigns too against IDF soldiers. So these are not just gestures. This is a build-up against Israel. They're not just happy stories of taking on Israel on a small scale either. These are escalating tactics in a global struggle against Israel's impunity and more solidarity with Gaza. More nations should work now to implement travel bans and work with the HRF in seeking arrest warrants for travelling Israelis, members of the IDF, if they are still able to travel to a given destination. More port unions worldwide must get behind the blocking of arms ships, as the Moroccan example should inspire dock workers in Europe, Asia and Africa to do so as well to really isolate Israel until and unless it ends its genocide of Gaza and gets out of Palestine. And more pressure on airlines and shipping companies must keep happening as well on top of that. Shareholders at firms like Maersk have had the willies put up them, even if their board hasn't apparently been fazed by it. But if they face enough disruption, Israel simply ending up no longer profitable for them to deliver to, especially if docks refuse to service their vehicles as may happen yet in Morocco. They're going to be in a bad spot, aren't they? Solidarity with Palestine is no longer just words and rhetoric. It is being followed up more and more by deeds. It is policy, it is labour action, and it is justice. Let's hope we see a lot more of it. For more on Maersk's BDS-inspired woes, though they might well have been telling fibs about in light of declassified findings now, check out this story here as your recommended next watch. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, so as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as supporting the channel at the same time, which is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people. I'll hope to catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.